So to get more on that, I'm bringing in our guest for today. We've got Ralph Welch. He is a writer for MMALatestNews.com. Ralph, it's so great to have you on Sportuccino this morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Richard. It's cold, it's wet. Donald Trump is the leader of the free world, but nothing can dampen our enthusiasm for UFC 205, I think.
Yeah, let's whet our appetite about this event, Ralph. We were just going through the main card there. We'll obviously talk about Conor McGregor and the main event, but out of that card or on the undercard, what particular fight are you looking forward to in New York?
Well, I mean, it's such a stacked card that there are some high quality fights that are almost going under the radar. And for me, the fight between Chris Weidman and Yoel Romero, which has enormous middleweight title implications, I think it could possibly steal the show, which sounds very difficult on a fight card that's got 3 title fights. But Chris Weidman is the man that beat Anderson Silva. He was sort of championed as the leader of the new breed of mixed martial artists in the UFC, and he's just kind of got a little bit forgotten since that Luke Rockhold loss. So for him to face a real beast like Yoel Romero, and you presume that the winner of that fight will get a shot at our own champion, Michael Bisping, I think that's the fight that's pretty much, for me, aside from the main event, obviously we're going to talk about Conor and Eddie, I think Weidman-Romero in Weidman's hometown of New York, he's going to get such a vociferous following there. And it's a real pick and fight as well. So I think if I had to choose one outside of the 3 title fights that I was most excited about, it'd definitely be that one.
Yeah, you mentioned he's the homeboy hero there. Just put into terms of just how momentous is it that the UFC is finally fighting in New York City?
Well, it's something that's been talked about. They lobbied hard for many, many years. New York State was, of course, the final frontier, if you like, for legalizing mixed martial arts across the United States. It was something that the UFC owners promised would happen whilst they were still with the UFC, and they promised they would deliver a spectacular event as and when they got to the Big Apple, and they've done it. I mean, 3 title fights, an enormous, I imagine it will be somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million pay-per-view audience, first time in New York City. And then also you've got history possibly in the making with Conor McGregor. He could become the first man to hold 2 titles, 2 different weight classes concurrently. So it is an enormous event. The UFC has put some enormous resources into it. And I think we're going to get something really, really special, and it will be history in the making.
Are you more excited about this 205 rather than 200? And do you think it's going to be a better event?
No question about it. Yeah, this card compared to UFC 200. UFC 200, obviously the number, anytime you've got 100 or 200, that is a showpiece. But you look at this card and you compare them side by side, and obviously UFC 200 suffered when John Jones had to step down from the card. This is a better card top to bottom. It doesn't have the showpiece attraction in the shape of Brock Lesnar, in someone that had a name appeal outside of mixed martial arts. But Conor McGregor is such an enormous star. He's a superstar in his own right, that having him try and make history in New York City, first ever time UFC's there, this is a bigger, better event, and I think it will do blockbuster numbers on pay-per-view in the US.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Brock Lesnar and the disappointment and all of that, but we could talk about 200 all day, but we want to look ahead to 205. Let's try and get some of your predictions on those 3 title fights. We'll start with the ladies first. I'm not going to pronounce their names again because I struggled the first time, but I believe that the reigning champion's unbeaten, and I heard some commentators call her like the next big thing in ladies MMA. Is that right?
Well, first of all, I thought you did a fine effort at pronouncing their names. It's Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Her surname is, it's the worst. It's your worst nightmare on Countdown, isn't it? But she is an extraordinary talent. I interviewed her last year, and I describe her as the most terrifying, nice person you've ever met. There is a real mean streak behind her glare. She is wonderful when you meet her in person. She's fantastic with the media, always gives you more time than you're allotted. answers your questions, answers them honestly, with a real kind of wit and charm. But when that octagon door closes, she becomes something else. She is just such an extraordinary athlete, just stupendous striking. And it's hard to see her walking away without her belt on Saturday. I think Carolina's highly talented. Her recent fight against Rose Namajunas was a tremendous performance from her. I'm not sure she has got the weapons to stop Joanna ploughing forward, landing shots, and just bit by bit starting to pick her apart. So I think the champion's going to walk out with the belt on that one.
Okay, let's quickly get your thoughts on the other fight, Tyron Woodley defending his title. Do you think he's going to retain?
Tyron Woodley's an interesting one. He's he won the fight against Robbie Lawler, who was much loved. He's a hero to MMA fans old and new, just because of his fighting style. And Tyron hasn't really been embraced by the fan base. He hasn't had a surge in popularity. There's people who have questioned his merits as a champion, which I think is ridiculous. If you beat the champion, you thoroughly deserve to be called the best in the world. They've questioned. He called for the GSP fight afterwards, which was the right thing to do because it would have made him a huge amount of money. So I think there's a recency issue that people have seen Stephen Thompson a lot more than they've seen Tyron in recent times. Tyron was sidelined for a long time, just waiting for that title shot. And I wonder if they've sort of forgotten a little bit about how good Tyron is. Stephen Thompson is another fine ambassador for this sport. His karate style is fantastic to watch. It's hard to know with certainty what Woodley's game plan would be, because the common conception would be that he might try and take Thompson off his vertical base and see if he can do some damage there. But you never quite know with Tyron. He's got such explosive power in his hands. Again, it's another pick and fight, which is what makes this fight card so great. I think Tyron Woodley needs to win. I think because of where he has it in terms of his character and his popularity, if he lost it, he might have a little while to wait before he gets another shot at it again. So I'm going to go with Tyron to win it.
Okay, and what about the main event? Conor McGregor versus, versus Eddie Alvarez where Conor McGregor can become a two-time champion, a two-division champion for the first time.
Yeah.
Do you think he can do it? And also, what type of fight do we expect this to be?
Well, I mean, this moment feels like what Conor McGregor has been building to. If you think back to 2013, 2014, when he burst onto the scene, he said he wasn't here to take part. He said he was here to take over, and that is really what he's done. He's turned himself into a money-making machine for the UFC. And this title fight, this attempt to make history, feels like this is his ultimate destination in this sport. So there's something about that storyline and the lightning bolt that McGregor's been for this sport that makes me think perhaps it is his destiny and he will win. In terms of the fight itself, well, we know how Conor McGregor fights. He's got this unique fighting style honed at the Straight Pass Gym with John Kavanagh. But what Eddie Alvarez has in his locker is an ability to fight ugly. I think if he stands and keeps his distance with Conor, he's just playing straight into Conor's hands. I think Eddie will try and smother him. He'll try and possibly stink the place out a little bit if he needs to and squeeze him up against the fence and just try and disturb Conor's rhythm, because that's really what you've got to do. Conor will come out and blitz you and he will try and maintain a rhythm, and he will wait for his shot and his opportunity to end the fight with that fantastic left hand that he has. If you can disturb that rhythm, Nate Diaz did it, then you've got a better shot of beating, the most famous martial artist in the world at this moment.
Yeah, at the world's famous arena, Madison Square Garden. We can't wait. We've really enjoyed your thoughts this morning. Ralph, just before you go, just let us know how we can follow you on Twitter, social media, and anything else you'd like to promote this morning, please.
Yeah, follow me on at Ralph Welch MMA, and then also follow at MMA Latest News. We bring updates from every fight promotion all over the world. We've got a great staff of writers there. So whether it's happening in ONE FC, Bellator, the UFC, BAMMA, Cage Warriors, you'll get exclusive content there, updates, stories, interviews, the lot. So please check it out as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Ralph Welsh from MMA Latest News. Thank you so much for being on Sportuccino.
It's a pleasure, Richard. Thank you.